Hello everyone, this is Arrow, and welcome back to Sundown Moon Up Podfics. Today we'll be continuing Shouta Aizawa is Caught Horribly Underprepared by Hollowed Block 07, Chapter 11, Tail's Long-Lost Cousin is a Bitch. Trigger warning, extreme violence, blood, and animal violence. Things did not end up looking up. While today was no day that shall not be named, it was a very uncomfortable close second. While Bakugo had seemingly backed off from bullying Izuku nearly as much as he had been according to his kid, the other students had doubled down since the greenette had made it onto local TV and had been developing visible confidence. While the Norette didn't see what had happened specifically, he did see the kid wiping away runaway tears when he was leaving the toilets, limping, shaking, and unfocused. If Shouta had to make a guess, the kid looked like he had a concussion and some other injuries and should not stay at school, but he couldn't convey that as a cat, not in any understandable and convincing way. So he simply had to watch his kid struggle to take notes, wince whenever jolted by other students, and shake like he was freezing for the rest of the school day. But that somehow wasn't the worst of it. God, Shouta wished that was the worst of the day. His kid barely made it out of school ground before he had been hounded by students and had to run, banging into corners and bins, stumbling over his own feet and on the uneven pavement, taking wrong turns in his escape, for what very well may have been his life, with a limp and a concussion. I swear upon every bloody idiot I have ever met that I will tear this school down brick by brick and burn it all into ashes. When the greenette had maybe lost his bullies, Izuku slipped his bag off his shoulders and slid against the alley wall, taking deep breaths, looking a few seconds away from vomiting or collapsing onto the dirty alley floor. Wonderful. Though as much as he wanted to rage and snark at Aldira and the kid's bullies, he needed to make sure his kid was okay. Not only so Izuku could rest and recover, but so the gnawing agony in his chest would leave him alone. He wasn't attached, not at all. Shouta slid gracefully, and the definition of graceful was almost face-planting in his hurry, out of the yellow backpack and pressed his side up against the kid's leg as a warm, comforting presence, trying to pay attention to the kid's breathing and focus as he purred, deep rumbles seeming to calm his kid if his slumping shoulders were anything to go by. It's okay, kiddo. He would kill to be a human if only to be able to murmur his comforting words to his kid, to hold him close, to call an ambulance, to kick those kids' asses so severely they lose all ability to sit down for the rest of their pathetic lives. Izuku's breathing evened, but his legs still looked injured. The arm that wasn't holding his body weight up was holding onto his stomach, and he still looked so out of it. Shouta worried that this may be more severe than the mild concussion he initially thought it was. Shouta was so busy worrying and trying to figure out how to get in contact with Recovery Girl that he didn't hear the footsteps that blocked off their only escape route, didn't see the dark, looming shadows of the bullies until they were engulfing him and his kid. Piss off, cat! You shouldn't even be associating with this quirkless null like Deku. The boys sneered down at him, and he hissed in retaliation because those arrogant fucking kids won't know what hit them when... Aizawa felt the blunt pain of the weightlessness before he realized what happened, and when it dawned on him that he had just been kicked by the lead bully, he crashed into a brick wall and cried out at the sensation of scrapes and a jolting of his bones upon impact. He fell to the floor and thought about getting up, but his limbs wouldn't cooperate. Now, of course, of all goddamn times. I heard through the grapevine that Bakugo finally told you what you should do with your worthless life, and you've yet to listen to him. I want to know why, Deku. The kid sneered. His two sets of arms both cracking their knuckles, an anticipatory, hungry glint in his eyes. Though Midoriya couldn't seem to hold on to their words, if Aizawa's own experience gave him any insight, it was probably that the boy could see them speaking, but couldn't concentrate enough to hear, much less over the insistent ringing of the concussion inside of his head. However, the bullies had no way to know this, and seemed offended that their Deku refused to speak to them. That's how we're gonna play it, huh? Okay, Deku. Remember, this is your decision. The boy grinned, teeth bared and eager, and Aizawa felt fear flood his body at the sight, fear for Midoriya. The quiet police moved to lift Midoriya up by his arms, using his armpit as leverage, and held him firmly, presenting him to the dumb leader kid with the extra limbs. Arms pulled two of his fists back and let them fly, one hitting his cheekbone, the other landing right in the center of the kid's chest, audibly winding him. Midoriya coughed, doubled over, gasping desperately for air as the two holding him uprighted his position, and Arms took another shot at their victim. And Aizawa fought desperately to stand up as this happened, begging and demanding that his legs obey him and support his weight, but they just couldn't. He was stuck watching Midoriya, the kid who he'd listened to excitedly ramble about heroes and statistics and sports and drama, the kid who he would sit with and just exist peacefully with, the kid he would watch train tirelessly with All Might every morning for a couple hours, the kid he could so easily see becoming a hero. He had to remind himself he hadn't even taken the UA entrance exam yet, be beaten and pummeled into the ground by some no-name Quirkus. And his heart was torn from his chest, shredded and stomped on and stabbed and tortured every time he heard his kid whimper or gasp for breath, hitch or whine or sob painfully. Every goddamn time, and Aizawa could have sworn he was being hurt just the same as Midoriya. Every blow he took, Aizawa matched in the agony. And he could see blood, and all of a sudden everything was quiet, though nothing stopped moving, and he just couldn't take his eyes off the puddle of blood Midoriya had just thrown up, all crimson and vicious and vile and wrong. Aizawa had hoped, had prayed that he wouldn't see blood on his kid because of some pathetic bullies, but here he was, injured and watching someone he cared about so severely injured they were vomiting blood. Something snapped and the air shuddered around him, and he couldn't let it happen again. He couldn't. He wouldn't. Shouta blinked and he came back to awareness, snapping out of whatever had overtaken before. Still tasting rage and protectiveness along his tongue, he looked down at his hands and saw blood. He saw his capture weapon unfurled but wrapped around the three kids, Arms with his nose at a severely wrong angle across his face with a trail of blood, and eyes dark and bloody matching his two lackeys. And Izuku, still out of it, slumped against the wall, eyes fluttering open and closed, not focused, never focusing in on anything. Shouta wrapped his arms? Hands? That wasn't important right now. Around his kid, tucking Izuku's head into the crook of his neck, pulling his phone from his pocket and dialing the police, reporting the situation with a detached coldness he wasn't entirely shocked by, taking quick breaks to assure his kid that this was all going to be okay. We'll get you to recovery, girl. Get those kids arrested and get you in a clean bill of health. And with his kid, with Izuku bleeding out internally in his arms, Shouta realized he had gotten what he wanted. He had become human again, but he hadn't prepared for this, hadn't prepared for the dear cost of getting what he wanted. What if he had to hold another funeral for someone he had failed to save? The clouds loomed above them, dark, angry, and dangerous, as though made of lead that could fall and crush anyone at any second. Shouta Aizawa could only prepare for the worst as he waited for the police and the ambulance to arrive. Chapter 12. Why does a written Foster accident apparently sound like a slurring child? Summary. Shouta and Izuku wait for an ambulance, and Shouta ignores the fact that he was a cat like 3 minutes ago. Shouta had had a very taxing day today. There was no death, no loss, no dead-end life encountered, nor any injuries that could attest the poor day to. No. Rather, it was his kid. And when did he start calling Izuku Midoriya his kid? When did Midoriya change to Izuku? His kid that had been hurt had been hunted for fun by those assholes with nothing better to do than torment someone who shook in fear at their mention. Izuku had had a very painful, very almost lethal day today, and Shouta had barely been able to do anything to help. It had been a Tuesday. He had been hit with a quirk due to some last-minute repairs the building had needed before, and it was fit to be inhabited by children once more on the Monday. And today was Monday, 27 days since he had been hit with the quirk that turned him into a cat. So unless the child who had turned him into a cat had decided to release him from the feline prison, or had been injured severely enough for the connection to settle, he must have met some requirement or broken the quirk's hold on him through hysteria, which seemed more likely given his spotty memory and history trying to outthink the quirk. Especially when quirks manifest, they perform for round-numbered lengths of time, such as days, weeks, or months. Odd coincidence, but it made situations like these easier. Shouta had plenty of time. The emergency responder had said 6 minutes for an ambulance and 9 minutes for the police to show up. It had been about 2 minutes since, where he couldn't do very much sans holding his kid in a position where he wouldn't choke if he did vomit again, and where he could provide comfort for the greenette. Cars drove by, people shouted and conversed as they walked past, and Izuku breathed irregularly, a rattling wheeze on his exhales. Multiplied eyes still unfocused and glassy with tears, but some flicker of recognition shone in them, and his kid's cheeks went deep red. Racerhead? What happened? His voice was hoarse and rough, but incredibly relaxing to hear. To know that his kid had some level of recognition of what was around him couldn't be too bad then. You were assaulted by some schoolmates. I took care of them. You're incredibly injured. Try to relax. An ambulance should be here very soon, kid. Izuku took a second to wrap his head around what Shouta said, but groaned, breathing picking up. I can't afford an ambulance, Racerhead, and my cat, little Racer, won't be able to come with me. I can't leave him alone. He means a lot to me, sir. I will pay for your ambulance and your cat is fine, I promise. Good name, by the way. Keep the kid talking. Keep the kid thinking and focusing if possible. 3 minutes. That cat's got a quirk, lucky bastard, and he's so smart, not like Nezu, though. That principal's so smart, but Racer is still pretty smart. He comforts me when I'm injured, and he listens when I ramble, and he taught me how to fight better than All Might did. But All Might's pretty bad at its job, especially when compared to you. You have such a high amount of jails, and you have practically no property damage. Heroes always have property damage. You're like a unicorn, Racerhead. Don't exist in hero society. Shouta struggled a little to piece together what his kid was saying, though the slurring and bad definitions of his job, but it was sweet to hear his opinion. He would have to properly ask the kid about his view on property damage in the hero industry and ask him to expand. But now he could hear the wail of the ambulance approaching and just wanted it here. Before he could plan how to discover instant travel because it was stupid waiting this long for an ambulance, said ambulance rolled up, emergency responders exiting the front seats and coming to check on his kid, asking the basic questions which he reported the best he could. Quirk? It may hinder in aid of our efforts, so we have to ask, the older one queried as the others pulled a stretcher out from the back of the vehicle. He's quirkless, so no effects either way. And he could see the moment Izuku's quirklessness had processed by the woman, and her focused professional Venus shattered with a grimace on her face. I'm sorry, sir, but we cannot help a quirkless and waste valuable resources on someone who will just kill themselves in a few months. Now, if Shouta hadn't spent years cultivating his image of being cold, calm, and collected, he would have exploded and throttled this woman, curb stomping her before lighting her on fire because quirkism was not on. It was especially not on in professional, incredibly urgent scenarios. But he was cold and collected, but not calm. No, he felt his quirk activate without prompting, and watched the woman shrink into herself at his knife-sharp glare, scared. Good. You are legally bound for as long as you are in the as long as you are an emergency responder to help him, regardless of quirk status. If you know what's best for your future at your job and any job in the medical profession, you will help him as you are expected to do, as is your job. Am I clear? The woman nodded frantically and moved to help push Izuku into the ambulance, leaving Eraserhead to distractedly greet the police and run through the charges while his kid was driven to the hospital. Alright, everyone, that's the end of chapters 11 and 12. It's so hard to hear how people respond after they hear the word quirkless, especially when it comes to like a medical situation, because I've read a few fics where Izuku has been ignored by hospitals just by saying he's quirkless, and I just don't understand the mentality of just because of something they don't have control over, they're denied treatment. And the audacity of this woman to say he's bound to kill himself sooner or later, so why should I waste my resources on him? Like, who thinks like that? Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.